Hey, Big Fam. Welcome to Life Beyond the Finish Line. I'm your host, Orlandina Fallon. I'm an educator, motivator, professional bodybuilder in the International Federation of Bodybuilding, the People's Holistic Lifestyle Coach. I am the Fitter Woman. Welcome back to Life Beyond the Finish Line. So today we are joined for the second time by our incredible Stephen Morse. In his first visit, we talked about helping athletes find their perfect fit. This time, we're diving into how he took his skills from the mound and stepped up to the plate in business. From all-conference player to Region 15 Coach of the Year and scout for the San Diego Padres, Stephen's career has been marked by excellence. Now, as the founder of Recruit You, he's helped student athletes find collegiate success. And in this episode, Stephen's going to share how he made the leap from athlete to entrepreneur and the mindset that it takes to win beyond the game. Welcome, Stephen.
How you doing? Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad you came back. I really didn't get a chance to get into how this athlete stepped into the entrepreneurial space because I feel like I was interviewing her name is Eve Travello. You don't know her, but Eve Travello, she was actually a U.S. judo champ and also U.S. Olympian. And she spoke about how when she was beginning to transition out of the competitive space and transition more into having her own business, she was like, I was ready for it. And I was like, but you always hear the opposite, where people are not ready to transition from one space to another. And I think that you can really, being an athlete, can really share with us what that looks like, what that feels like, and how to go about doing it. So, let's just get started. You've had an incredible career on the field, all conference honors, Coach of the Year, and time with the Padres. What part of your identity as an athlete did you carry into recruiting?
Yeah, I would say two characteristics that I carried from the field, and not only into my business, but just into my everyday life and professional life, would be my work ethic and my preparation. I was never, as an athlete, the best player on the field, really, from any level, from middle school all the way through college.
Really?
So I always had to be that guy that worked extra super hard to get the opportunities that I was given. And then when I got into coaching, I always said to my assistant coach, these guys may have more experience than me, but the one thing I could promise you is I'm going to be the most prepared guy in the room. And that's just one thing that I kind of tried to own my hat on. And now in the business space, I try and use those two traits as well.
That's funny, because that's that, as the old saying goes, hard work would beat natural ability, natural talent any day. So that's like, you fall right into that. That's so interesting. What was the moment that you knew that it was time to pivot from playing and coaching? Because you coached for some time.
Right.
But did you know it was time to pivot from playing and coaching to focusing solely on recruiting? How did you make that decision? What did it feel like?
Yeah. So playing, sometimes the game kind of decides when it's time to hang up the cleats. And, I had a really nice run in college at both Dowling College and then finishing up at SUNY New Paltz. And my last year was by far my strongest year that I had as a player. But at the end of the day, not every guy gets the opportunity to go on and play professionally. And I was one of those guys that, although I was able to get it done at that level, I didn't have the opportunity to continue playing. And that's a difficult transition for anybody, because your whole life to that point, your everyday routine and things like that is based around the game. So, when the game decides that it's time for you, it's a tough transition to everyday life. And all I think you could do is take those memories and those skills and those traits that you had as a player, and then try and transition those into your everyday life. For me, it was a pretty easy transition, because I went from immediately playing to 2 months later, now I'm on the other side of the field and I'm working as a coach. So I still got to stay involved with baseball, which was so big to me and so important to me. Except I was just doing it from a different lens now, opposed to being on the field. Now I was in the dugout, helping out the coaching staff at SUNY Brockport, and then going to SUNY Ulster and, doing the whole deal there. So it was an easy transition to get into coaching, and then, to pivot then from coaching to then in the business. It was another easy transition, just because I was transitioning, although I was no longer on the field. I was still staying in a landscape that was super, super important to me, and I was very passionate about, which is college recruiting.
So you found that your passion for baseball, you were able to stay connected to that passion for baseball and just say, okay, I'm going from the athlete space to the recruiting space to now the entrepreneurial space. So, but you were able to stay connected to that one common thread, which was baseball.
For sure. And it was important to me to do that because, when I finished playing in college, I had some interest a little bit, in maybe trying to continue playing and doing some sort of independent baseball or maybe playing outside of the United States, which would have been a great opportunity. But it just wasn't the right fit for me. And I didn't get the opportunities really that I was hoping for. So at that point, I kind of still was holding on to playing a little bit. So I really needed that transition to still stay involved with the game in some measure. So it was a good fit moving
Yeah,
forward.
you're speaking to me because when I decided to retire from bodybuilding, I found myself still looking for ways to stay connected to competition just because I love prepping for a goal. Like when I train, I like training for a specific goal. And my coach was like, "Why do you keep looking for things to get into?" I was like, "I don't know. I just feel like if I'm training without something to look forward to or something
Right.
to strive for, that it's I can't stay connected to it or I can't be true to it." But when I decided to do this, I was like, you know what? I am staying connected just from a different space as a storyteller for athletes because I know what it's like to be in that space and to be able to hear their stories. So yeah, and you keep saying like, just it was really important for me to stay in the space, staying around athletes and that mindset. That was very important. So now when I'm training, I'm like, I'm training for this life beyond the
Right.
finish line. So it gives me a sense of purpose. Um, where did you have any fears about stepping away from the field? And how did you begin to mentally prepare for that shift? Because it's never easy. Like you said, you've been doing this since you were a kid, right? Little league and all this
Right.
thing. So, what fears did you have in stepping away, if you had any?
It was very difficult for me to step away from the game because as a player, of course, you love the games and the memories that you make with your teammates, but I genuinely love the process. I love the process of trying to improve my skills and to get better and to win this starting job or whatever it may be. So when you're very invested in the process, like I said a few minutes ago, that becomes your routine. And I kind of fell in love with that process and that routine. So it wasn't like I was stepping away from the 35 games or 40 games we might have played that season. I was stepping away from the 9 or 10 months that we were in the weight room together, that we were,
Yeah.
following the right diet, as a group, we were following our nutrition the right way and things like that. So I was really losing such a big part of me. So it was really difficult. I didn't really think about how difficult it was going to be until you start looking at the schedule and you realize, wow, I only got 9 or 10 games left. And then the playoffs hit and it's like, okay, well, I got to win this playoff series or it's over. And then it's like, okay, well, now we got one game left. And you basically go down that schedule like that. And you start to think, well, it's going to be over soon. And then when it happens, it takes time. It's almost like it's a loss. It's a loss. It's something that you've been invested in for so long that it's difficult. But like anything, time heals everything. And for me, that transition just to get directly into coaching and then to, obviously I wouldn't be in the entrepreneurial state that I'm in now with my baseball business if I still didn't have that passion and I still didn't really love that process of now, as opposed to doing it myself. Now I get to pass on the things that I got to experience onto the guys that I work with. So I'm still involved with the game, but when you first leave, it's definitely a tough transition, like you were even mentioning in your own scope.
The cadence of it, and now that tempo has changed, so it's just like, wait a minute, it could be very disconcerting. So what would you say in this first part of your life, during the first part of your life, in your baseball life, I should say, what has baseball taught you about life and its infinite transitions?
Yeah, so baseball and really any sport that you play, just life in general, being a student athlete, I think there's so many different skills that you could translate from the field or your preparation or whatever it may be into any other professional landscape. Of course, there's things like, you learn diligence and time management and all those different things that every coach has probably said to every guy. But the one thing that I think is so important that really stuck out to me is baseball is a game of failure. So being that it's a game of failure, for me, you need to truly learn how to be consistently disciplined in your approach and your process in order to be successful, in order to kind of keep your cool and keep your head throughout everything that you do. You know, in baseball, if you get hit 3 out of 10 times, you're a Hall of Famer. So that's a lot of times that you're striking out. There's a lot of times you're getting out. It's a lot of failure that you need to overcome. If you are consistently disciplined in your approach, I believe that that's going to lead toward long-term success. So that's one thing. And that's one thing that I take now from, you know, my playing days. I was very consistently disciplined, whether I was 0 for 4 or I was 3 for 4. You know, if my plan was to get to the batting cages the next day, it was still going to happen, regardless of what the outcome was the night before. So now I take that discipline and I move it more into my state now, and more of an entrepreneurial state in my business where, you know, if I have goals that I need to achieve, or if I'm trying to follow, you know, a quota in terms of doing this or that for the business, I'm consistently disciplined and not really letting anything get in the way of that. So that would be one thing that I think you could definitely take from the game, is just the ability to be consistently disciplined in everything that you do.